Aninchigakin, Denise Kennedy Desnakas, Hashklashkanakaning Donchi, Nichigi and Damamayan. I'm coming here today to the language conference, and my presentation is called Bringing Our Languages Home. I'd like to give thanks to SICC for inviting me to present, to my First Nation Pasqua, to the school that I work at, Chief Pasqua Education Center, University of Regina for allowing me to do research, and the Faculty of Education for accepting my research. I'd also like to give thanks to Nitapanochimak, my children, for allowing me to explore ways in language learning with them in our own home. Nimama, my mom, for being on our language journey with us. Apanochia Pasqua Shkanakaning, the children of Pasqua, the children that I teach in the school, and Anishinaabe Pasqua Shkanakaning, the people of Pasqua, for allowing me to teach the language in our community. So the rationale of this project is because of colonialism, our languages are endangered, specifically in Canada, well, all over, but in Canada, there's about 90 Indigenous languages in Canada. About 70 of those are vulnerable, are close to extinction. So this is why I'm doing this research on language revitalization. Specifically on Pasqua First Nation, my home reserve, there is approximately 1,900 band members, with 700 of those living on reserve. And what I found that I'm the language teacher on Pasqua First Nation, and I've been teaching there approximately 10 years. And this is where my research arose. Teaching the students on Pasqua First Nation, they're learning the language. They're learning it in the classroom, but when they go home, they have no one to speak it to. Because in Pasqua First Nation, we're considered Cree Soto Band, and out of those 700 that are living on reserve, not even a handful are fluent in their languages. So right now, the students know more language than their parents. So when they leave the classroom, when they leave the school, they have no one to speak it with. It sits in the classroom. And this is a problem. And I'm thinking it's not only Pasqua. I believe there's probably other communities in this state. So this is why I wanted to do this research. I actually did a master's thesis on this, and I created a language nest in my home. And it was really successful for my children, for myself, for my mother. But what I realized when after finishing this research project, a lot of our band members, a lot of our community members do not have those same resources that we have with fluent speakers. So I had to back up a bit. And in order to do that, I had to do a little bit more research. So within my thesis, I started bringing out different language tools that more people could use, more common people can use that don't have those fluent speakers to bring into their homes. So this presentation is about bringing the language into our homes, whether you have a fluent speaker or not. It's giving you a little bit of hope, a little bit of guidance of what you can do. Whether you know any of your language, a little bit of your language, or none. It gives you a little bit of hope, I'm hoping. So in all the research that I've always used our Anishinaabe worldview, first and foremost, especially when it comes to Indigenous languages. We have to use our Anishinaabe worldview We have to use indigenous methodology to do that. Language revitalization does not work well with just Western academics. We have to use our way of thinking, our way of thought, to make it holistic, to make it from the heart. So, first and foremost, before anything, even before my presentation, before my research, actually, I always acknowledge Chimanto in everything that we do. Chimanto is the first and foremost that who we have to acknowledge. We have to understand that our languages, indigenous languages, have a spirit. And like many of our elders, Chinishnabek, they always say that our languages are in us. Whether we speak the language or not, it's in our veins, it's in our DNA. It needs to be awakened. So during my thesis, I introduced ceremony. I introduced ceremony into that. And I made it a research methodology. It was important for me to do that because in order for us to work with our languages, it's not just from reading from a book. It's not just learning words. Those words have meanings behind them. And that's kind of our sacred languages walk within us. And that's exactly what our elders say when they say it's in our veins, it's in our DNA. So even though I'm using somewhat of Western academics, just always keep in mind I've always used the Anishinaabe worldview and indigenous methodology. Excuse me. So like I said, you always have to seek guidance from Chimanto. People go to ceremony, people offer Wipanaashinan just to awaken that language spirit. It's up to us how we want to do that. But we must, when we're working with our indigenous languages, we have to always remember to acknowledge Chimanto. We can't just walk into it like it was the English language. So when I did the language nest, there was many different obstacles. I walked into my language nest thinking that it was going to be perfect because I had the resources. I had speakers, I had fluent speakers, I had grandparents, I had my children. That's all we needed to have a successful language nest. So I thought. I walked into a lot of different obstacles, like time restraints. When you're working with your language, it's not linear. You can't set a time for it. You can't say, okay, I'm gonna do the language from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and I'm gonna learn it all. You have to be patient with it. And living in a busy world as we do today, it's really hard to do that because some of us work where there's nothing but English. Some of us go to school, there's nothing but English. We go shopping, there's nothing but English in the grocery stores. So it's really hard to sit there and say, I'm going to build a language nest. And it's going to be nothing but Anishinaabe Moen, Nakwewen. So we have to think in that term too, time restraints. And then the resistance. When my children were learning the language, they were very resistant with it. Even though it was theirs, even though they heard mom and Noko Miss speaking the language all the time, they were just used to hearing it. They weren't used to speaking it. So they were very resistant in it. And then, like I already spoke about the English dominance. It's everywhere, and that causes for it can be very frustrating when you have when you think this is how something should go, but English dominance kind of takes over that. It's everywhere. It's on the TV, it's on the radio, it's on the iPads, it's everywhere where the children want to play and whatnot. So when I did the language nest, my initial reason for doing the language nest was when I was teaching my students at Chipasco Education Center. One student come up to me and she loves language class, and she says, "Miss, I tried to speak Soto to my parents yesterday, and they told me we don't understand that. Don't speak that. We don't understand what you're saying. Speak English." And that opened my eyes a lot. I'm like, my students are learning. My students are learning the language, but their parents don't understand it. And it's kind of intimidating because it's new to our homes. And I wanted to take away that our language is a subject in the classroom. That's why I wanted to make this presentation, bringing our languages home. So I put it upon myself in my research to find ways to get our languages into our homes, so my students can speak with their families, so that the parents, the grandparents, are comfortable speaking the language. And so with my language nest, I realized that not all of our families have fluent speakers. They can't create language nests in a home because we're really low on fluent speakers resources. So I kind of had to back up that research so it could fit into my community and other communities that are in the same state. So during my research, I found different learning tools that I could use in my own home with my children. One of the learning tools comes from the language framework, linguistic landscape theory. It's basically putting labels all over your home in the language. This not only shows your children or yourself, whoever, that the language is there, it's important. It reminds you, oh, I should be using my language. It's right here. And you can put it anywhere in your home. You could start small. You can start in one room. You could start in the kitchen, and you could start labeling your kitchen. Once you've remembered and mastered all those labels in your kitchen, you could start making them into sentences. And then you'll start doing that, and you'll master your sentences and start asking questions. Once you mastered that part of your house, you can move to another part and do the same thing. You're making small goals for language learning in your home, but they're attainable goals. You're not overwhelming yourself trying to learn the language right away. Because I found that when you're trying to learn the language, you want to learn, you get overwhelmed, you get frustrated, and you put it away. It's okay to make small goals. Our languages are very fragile right now. It's like you're holding a glass in your hands. You get frustrated, you get overwhelmed, you drop it and it breaks. Treat it like that. Celebrate those small successes. Don't be hard on yourself. So, labeling your homes, we did that in my home. And that was for me, because we're living in a dominated society, English-dominated society, I too forget to use the language. It was just my reminder. But my children seen that also. So they knew the language is always there. So these are some examples of pipinteken, come in. So these were at the door. Pipinteken, come in. And then tamanon, go and play. Niwiyanama chesakwa. I'm going to leave now. You know, just basic little sentences, small attainable sentences that we can learn easily. I also I was searching different ways of how I could keep my children interested in language learning. And so I brought poesins into my house. I got a little kitten and I brought him into our home. Poesins is Seneca, so I told my kids. This is his name is Cat, basically. I told my children, and he only understands Sodo, Nakwewen. And they're like, so you can only speak the language to poesies, or he's not gonna listen. So that really caught their attention. And again, making little sentences. Asam poesies, feed the cat. Nipimina minikwen. Give the cat water. You know, just little attainable sentences to teach your kids and yourself. So, come here, cat. You know, just so it really the children really enjoyed that, using the cat, and they took to the language because it was fun. They loved the cat, and maybe I fibbed a little bit saying that he only understood Soto, but it worked. So, and then reclaiming domains. That's where I was kind of talking about it goes hand in hand with the labeling, where you work in one space in your home. You master that space in the language. But what I did, instead of me going from room to room, I did like the exercises or daily activities, like washing your face, washing your hands, bath time, bedtime. So like with my son, when he was having a bath, it was all in the language. When it was bedtime, it was all in the language. So there's different ways that you can reclaim your domain in your home. You could do it by room, or you could do it by activity. You could do it for cooking. It's up to you, kinanish, how you want to use it. But that's you creating small goals in your home for language learning. Small attainable goals. That is your goal when you don't have a fluent speaker. That is your goal, and it's attainable for you to do that in your home with your children. So like I said, in this slide, I used the different activities, daily activities, rather than the different rooms. So like, it's bedtime, it's time to wash your face, it's time to have a bath, all in the language. And again, just using small goals. So our language revitalization, maintenance, it's very important. And I noticed that from my community that it could be overwhelming because there's not enough resources. Well, we don't have fluent speakers. Well, now you have a little bit of tools that you could start off with. You can find resources online with these sentences that you can use. It takes time, it takes effort, but it's very, very rewarding. So when your children are coming home speaking the language, you can speak with them. Okay? It's